Welcome to another episode of Tech Tuesday. As you can see, I look like I'm broadcasting from a hotel room because I am in the San Francisco Bay Area, town of Berkeley, at the old historic Claremont Hotel, where attending the Mary Furlong's What's Next Boomer Summit. I think I got that name more or less right. I just listened to a very inspiring keynote with Ken Dykewald. I'll have a bunch of notes on that. And I may try to get him on Foresight TV to talk about some of his insights because there were so many good lessons for senior living. But today I've got Jack Cumming. You know him well, right? Creates a bunch of content as part of the Foresight team. And Leo, who is also a senior living resident. We're going to talk about senior living resident technology. Leo has a long work career in technology. And so before that, let's do this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Jack, Leo, welcome to Tech Tuesday. Jack, let's start with who you are. Many of the audience will know, but let's just do a refresher here.
Okay, well, I think most of you probably know me as the resident correspondent for Senior Living Foresight, where I perhaps write more than as I should, but there you have it. And Steve asked that I also introduce Leo briefly. And so Leo has been a mainstay in the resident pulling for technology in senior living. He brought resident engagement really to life in the CCRC where I live. His career has been on the cutting edge of technology from the very beginning. He started at the Palo Alto Research Center of Xerox, and you may be familiar with that because that's where so many advances like the mouse and the graphic user interface were first introduced. And not surprisingly, he moved from there to Microsoft, where his office was next door to Bill Gates. So, Leo, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I'm a nerd, have been a nerd, still a nerd.
So, as you from where do I start? So the first really senior living tech conference I ever attended was actually the conference that I'm at now. And this is probably 12 or 13 years ago. And one of the things that was so shocking, one of the things they did was a pitch competition. And they had a number of investors who sat at a table, and 8 or 10 companies came up, startup companies came up and pitched their technology for older people. And going into this thing, I thought, this is going to be so exciting. I'm going to get to see this early look at all this amazing technology that's been designed for older people that is going to be so cool. And I sat there through, I think, 8 or 10 pitches. And I'll be honest, I came away really disillusioned. Most of them were downright dumb. I was going to say terrible, but they were just dumb ideas. There was one that made a little bit of sense and actually has been acquired by Best Buy, but I think even the product itself is mostly gone. And so I would like to just start by having each of you talk a little bit about what technology you use, and maybe talk a little bit about the technology you've used and tried, or just that you've seen that you think is really dumb. Particularly in the space of aging. So, and Leo, let's start with you.
Okay. I think the the biggest enlightenment that I've had since I came to Carlsbad by the Sea was I I thought that we needed some way for residents to see what was going on at Carlsbad by the Sea, and of course I thought about doing a website, and then I got to looking into it, and I discovered that the software that the staff used here to run Carlsbad by the Sea, which was called Touchtown at that time, and now I believe it's called Uniguest. Um, anyway, it had a resident portal on it, which it called Concierge. And it dawned on me then that this was perfect because the staff was already maintaining all of that data. The staff didn't have to do anything more to let residents access it. If I would just take over and bring it up and configure it and maybe do some customization and stuff like that. And it has exceeded my wildest expectations. The residents use it all the time. They love it. The staff doesn't have to do anything more than they normally do for their jobs. And then all us residents get a chance to look at what's being planned and what's been done and things like that. And then I added a little bit of spice to it by letting residents post their pictures up there and of their pets and things like that. And that combination of being able to look at exactly what staff is doing combined with personalized things from each of the residents, I think has just been very successful. Do you agree with that, Jack?
I do. I think the concierge, we call it, it's part of Touchtown, is very, very valuable. Unfortunately, the software, as it's delivered by Uniguest now, does not do a good job with preparing forms. So Leo used Google Forms to make it really workable. But I can say that this has been a long-term dream that Leo was successful in bringing to pass. When I moved in 2006, the talk was of intranets and internet. And an intranet was something that people inside an organization could use to simplify tasks internally. And I was surprised that you couldn't order work repairs or meals or whatever simply online on an intranet. So I talked to the executive director and was told it was too costly. So knowing a little bit about it, I went out and set up a website to do that would enable that to happen, and said, I'll give it to you. And at that point, people got involved, and we were told that that was an unauthorized website that was inconsistent with the branding. So we've come a long way from that sort of a technophobic approach. And I think that the fact is that it's the residents who are driving the adoption of technology in this senior living industry. The residents want to be up to date and be part of all the benefits that come with technology. And back in that time, which now seems long ago, but it really wasn't that long ago, 18 years, the whole business was run on paper and fax machines and all sorts of things which can be automated. So now it's encouraging that we're seeing the industry begin to move forward. But whether senior living and services directed specifically to the elderly will lead the technology revolution or the reverse remains to be seen.
So as you
I want to add something to this, Steve.
Very good.
And this was another insight, and Jack's mentioning paper brought it to mind, and that is, yes, we did add the capability to do online ordering of your takeout meals and things like that. But I think just by chance, I made a promise to everybody, which was that concierge was not going to be required. That if you don't have a smartphone or you don't have a computer, you will still be able to participate with the paper world that goes on out there. We publish a paper calendar every month, and there are paper signups for ordering your takeout meals. And I agreed that we would always have that paper path in parallel. And that has turned out to be a very, very good thing. At Carlsbad by the Sea, 80% of the residents have some sort of a smart device, but that still leaves 20% that don't have the device. And we don't want to bifurcate the community. We don't want to leave them out. We don't want them to feel like second-class citizens. And this is a bigger thing, which I was hoping to talk about today. And that's the idea that when new technology comes out, they're always trying to make the most of it and make it the most powerful and the most complicated and the most, the fastest. But for senior communities, we need less power. We need less complications. They provide interfaces to these new technologies on different devices and things like that. It would be great if they could have, a little button you could press that would say, "Keep it simple, stupid," and you get most of the power very easily. That would be very nice. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about the paper path. Is there's always got to be a way to use some of these facilities that is low tech, but also gets the job done.
So this is a really interesting. I'm glad you brought this up. Yesterday there was a session on AI, and one of the presenters talked about how there's this huge digital divide, and people who sort of don't have access to it or don't want to use it. And so my question was, or to them, my response to that was, people still have the right to not use technology, right? And as somebody who I love AI, I love technology. I also recognize, I've got a brother, my younger brother. He is about as much a Luddite as you can get. He has a cell phone. I don't even think it's a smartphone. That's probably 15 years old. He inherited it from his son. When I call him and leave him a message, the voice message saying "leave a message" is still his son's because he doesn't know how to fix it. And I don't know whether he could even turn on a computer, honestly. And I think that at least from his perspective, I think there's some things to be better off about, but from his perspective, he just doesn't need it. So I think that that's really important, the right to do that or not do that. So in addition to this Uniguest, what other technology do you use? Whether it's part of the community or in your own personal life. And the reason this is so important, I see less of this than it used to be, but when I first started Foresight 14 years ago or so, and I was knocking around and looking at technology, there was all this stuff that was created for seniors. There were phones that were dumbed down. There must have been at least, over the years, I've probably seen a dozen tablets that were made simple enough for older people to use. And then there was a panel with a bunch of people that ranged from, I think, at a conference from age 70 to up in their 80s, maybe 90s. And I think the one thing that struck me out of it was that everybody was just using the same technology that everybody else was using.
Well, I want to talk about AI since you mentioned it.
Sure.
My degree from school is in artificial intelligence, but I got it in 1965. when AI was just beginning, and we were trying to do something which it bears no resemblance to what they call AI today. I think AI today, large language model and all of that, is more about information searching than it is about intelligence or whatnot. But I want to say that even though I was pessimistic about AI, I now have found what I think is a great use for AI, and I'm trying to promulgate this throughout Carlsbad by the Sea. And that's the following. If a resident at Carlsbad by the Sea or any community does a Google search, they want to search and find the best way to take the lid off of a jar or whatever it is, and they type in, lid off the jar, remove, into the address bar, and they press enter. What do they get? They get a list of websites back. And now they have to decide which website to look at. They have to go through 2 or 3 of them to see. And if they get on one that's, a malicious website or one that's incorrect, then they come away with bad stuff. But nowadays, I go on my Google. I don't go to the address bar anymore. I go to Gemini. And I ask Gemini, what's the best way to take the lid off the jar? And Gemini comes back not with a list of websites, but with a summary of what it found by looking at 10,000 websites. And that's usually pretty reliable. It's not always reliable, but much more reliable than letting seniors decide which website they want to look at today, which is kind of dangerous sometimes. So this use of AI as smart browsing, I think I'm learning to really like that. What do you think of that, Jack?
Well, I use it that way myself, although I'm very cautious, and I think that artificial intelligence, machine learning that Ed Berkeley first foresaw way back in the late 1930s is becoming a reality. What's new is that instead of it being programmed deterministically so that you, through loops, you asymptotically converge on the best answer, people like Jeffrey Hinton and Fei-Fei Li have brought forward a way of trying to make it work like the neural networks that we have in our actual brains. The difficulty with that is the same problem that we have with our brains, which is that often you don't get the right answer and you may even have poor judgment. But I wanted to comment on this thing because I think that the nature of the resident has changed between when I moved in and when Leo moved in. Because when I moved in, most of the people who lived here had retired before the personal computer revolution came into offices. So they were totally intimidated, even by something as simple as a personal computer. Residents today come in expecting to have advanced technology, and when they don't find it, it's not good for the reputation of the community. We'll just put it that way. If you want to have a reputation to be the go-to community in your area, you want to be on the cutting edge of the latest technology, and most of that is oriented toward consumers. So we had a project here started by a fellow named John Sanders, who chaired the technology committee. Incidentally, having a technology committee was a resident initiative, that because residents were upset that we were lagging so much in technology, and John Sanders came in, and the Alexa devices were brand new then. It was obvious they could help people. I remember Grace Bolton at age 103 said, "I don't want any technology." And then she found out she could get this thing to read the Bible to her, and that swung her around. And next she found out she could adjust the temperature in her room by just asking this device instead of calling for help, and she was sold. So the power of technology for residents has been clear from the beginning. And John came up with the idea that we would buy a few of these devices and give them to new residents to try out, and there would be other residents who would help them use it. And then if they liked it, they could make a donation to allow the technology people, the residents, to buy more devices for other new residents, a sort of a pay it forward, resident initiated, resident driven, nobody coercing you, nobody saying you must do this. And that has proved very successful. I think our resident population is quite sophisticated on a technology level compared with many other communities. And of course, now most of the residents coming in did use computers in their workplace. They do know what computers can do, and they go into shock when they find out how much paper is still in use. Would you say that's a fair statement, Leo?
Yes, indeed. Yep. And I would also like to bring up a new topic, Steve, and this is the idea that everyone talks about the senior living market like it's one thing. And, continuing care communities are divided into independent living, assisted living, continuing care, things like that. And that's what I'm finding is I'm in independent living right now, and I've got a lot of different needs and likes and abilities than I had when I was a younger man. But there are 3 stages in front of me. And as I go through these stages, I'm going to need different technologies with different capabilities. So I don't see anybody dividing the senior living market up into sub-markets.
That's a really interesting point. I want to actually sort of step back and ask a question here. Are there technologies? Maybe this isn't quite the right way. I'll ask it to you. Let's start with my original question. Are there technologies that would make your life easier as residents that either don't exist or don't exist in your communities that you think should? So that's sort of the first part of the question. And then almost the same question, but a little bit different. What functions do you see happening that are so manual that should be automated with technology?
Well, I'll start with one of those. We have a call system, and that call system was upgraded at great expense not too long ago, and we have pendants. So if you need if something goes wrong and you need assistance, the idea was you press the pendant, and if you're on the campus, they'll come. They approximately know where you are. So that meant the campus had to be wired so that they could be localized. And the result was we all got these pendants, and I used it for a while. And that lasted until 2 occasions when a male nurse came trotting into our bedroom at 3 a.m, startling my wife out of a sound sleep because the system malfunctioned so much. And this was when the Apple Watch was there. And if we could, for a fraction of the cost, we could have bought everybody an Apple Watch and restricted the perimeter to allow for the liability challenges that they were trying to address with this other system. I don't want to say who made it, but I mentioned that because I know that's kind of, you were involved with call systems for a while, Steve, so you really understand that. So the other thing is that we now have a system that keeps track of assisted living care calls, and it's automated, but we don't have resident access to that system. So we can't go in and check our information or update it online. You have to go and you look at a printout and all of that. There's just so many opportunities to move forward with technology. And a lot of this is because there's an expertise at the corporate level, and so that they manage a lot of the technology, and that has a certain effect. So the question becomes, how can you upgrade? How can you get this resident expertise that often transcends the technology capabilities of the organization into play? Now, Leo's been involved in doing this, and I think he's made a tremendous contribution. I don't know whether you want to say anything about that. I haven't been. My time of being consulted is long since, but I think I'm thought of too old. But Leo, you're still a youngster, and they still are talking with you. How do you see that interaction working out?
Not too well. And I don't quite know what the answer was, but I want to answer Steve's question about what technology do I think I need and am I missing today? And one is very clear. When I was a young man, I didn't worry about health. I didn't even think about health. I didn't think about medicine. I went once a year for my annual physical. That was it. Now, health is front and center in my life. I'm dealing with the medical community all the time. And you know what? I find myself having to go to the doctor's office, having to go to the lab. It's an all-day thing. And woe unto me if I feel bad because I end up in the ER for an entire afternoon to find out that I'm fine. Telemedicine has failed me. We need telemedicine. It's been promised for years. We still don't have it.
Yeah. There's no question that that's true. I mean, I can do telemedicine visits with my doctors, but it is such a pain to do. And the system and the setup, and you are right. The problem I see, and this is a systemic problem, is that our healthcare systems in the United States today are designed to serve the needs of the healthcare system and not the needs of the patients. The patients are just there to, the patients are almost a bother, except that they represent the dollars. And it's actually, one of the models I like a lot is there are a number, I think there are 8 or 10, maybe 15 Erickson communities. And they're huge. They have, 15, 12. I think the smallest one is 1,000 residents. They'll go up to 15 or 1,800 residents. But they actually have physician practices on site, and so you can go to the clinic. And I assume you can. I assume you can call. I don't know. That's a good question. I should ask that. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. One of the things.
So and I live in a retirement community, so they could have a room that's got, blood pressure cuff and pulse rate and a thermometer. They can have all that stuff. I shouldn't have to go anywhere other than down the hall. Or maybe I have all these devices in my own room. And, if I'm not feeling bad, they can take my temperature. They can take I don't have to get in the car to have my blood pressure taken. What is this?
Yeah. It's so funny because you guys are talking about such basic things, and I'm here at this conference on aging technology, and all these people, and a lot of these people are they're young people, and they're people in their 50s and 60s, a few of us in our 70s, and we're all trying to figure out what you guys need, except that you haven't talked about any of the things that they're talking about as being most important. So the big themes here there's wellness themes. So you sort of touched on that. Maybe there's a lot of talk about dementia and cognitive decline and those kinds of things. And I haven't heard you guys talk about that as being very important in your lives.
Well, that's because I'm still in independent living.
Well, so is Jack. But that's you're still their target.
I have an automated cat, and the kids like to play with it. and it's a hell of a lot cheaper than Perro, the animated seal. So
Yeah.
that's an advance in the dementia area, I guess. And maybe I'm demented because when that cat purrs, it's kind of comforting.
So I had one for my mom. I was still in my house. Actually, they are really neat. What about one of the discussions that actually came up this morning? Ken Dykewald actually touched on this. Is that he sees a huge opportunity in the world of gaming. That gaming has more stimulation. He said the average senior, don't know exactly what the age range was, the average senior watches 47 hours of television a week. And so the idea would be that you could get people maybe into gaming, which would help with cognitive function, perhaps even create community. Thoughts on online games?
Yes, I do have some thoughts. Um, we talked about this system here at Carlsbad by the Sea called Concierge, and I helped decide what kind of features are on it. And one of the features that was possible was we could have added lots of video games. And I said, the residents don't need video games from Concierge. If they want to do a game, they can go on the internet, and there are a million games out there. So we don't have a gaming feature on Concierge. Not because I don't think games are useful and helpful with your mind and all of that. It's just that there are plenty of those. We don't need more of those.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree. I think that shows a misunderstanding. There's this myth that we old people have nothing to do and we're looking for some amusement and we're just drooling and trending toward the end of life and going to fall off the edge soon. And so I hope that works out for Ken. But I would think he'd do better selling that to teenagers than to old people.
Well, I think, Jack, I think that you actually, we're going to finish with that because we're past out of time. But I actually think that this was a really important. You made an important point. Is that everyone there at this conference? I guess I'm here too, so it applies to me. But we have this perception of what older people are like. And so then we go and we develop these things based on our perceptions, but maybe those perceptions aren't so accurate. And I think one of the things that we think is that, people are missing those stimulation. And it's a really fascinating question. I mean, how many people when we go out and talk to older people, how many of them actually feel like they're bored and need something to need help with that? My guess is it's a smaller number than we think. I'm going to give you each 30 seconds. Leo, you get to go first. And as our tradition at Foresight, Jack always gets the last word.
Oh,
okay. Well, I found this stimulating and interesting. I hope you bumped into some opinions you hadn't heard before, but keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. Jack, you get the last word.
Well, you asked how many people really listen to older people. And I certainly put you in that category because you've tolerated me on Senior Living Foresight. There are just two people come to mind: Joe Velderman and John Scott Williams. I can't offhand name anybody else in the industry who's paying a bit of attention in technology to what can work for residents. So when it's only two people out of an entire industry, that tells you something.
Yep, I think that that's an important comment. And with that, thank you so very much. Thank you both very much for joining me. Hang on for just a minute after we're off air and we'll do a little debrief.